The Latino Donor Collaborative is a nonprofit that was created in 2010 when some of these laws in the border states started emerging, where racial profiling of Latinos was being legalized. So if you looked or sounded Latino, they could arrest you without even having any motive for it. And so all these leaders on the business side and on the social, justice side got together and decided we need to do something.
Welcome, everyone, to the very first edition of Conexión, presented by Wafi Media. I am your host, Rafael Fernandez, founder of Wafi Media and host of the Latin Babbler Show. Joining me today is our senior writer, Brenda Nicole Pena. You guys all know the beautiful articles that she writes for our websites. Our special guest today has a tremendous business and nonprofit experience, the co-founder of Valdez Productions, Inc., which has produced the Brothers Garcias and Nickelodeon recently, and the Garcias on HBO Max. So if you haven't seen it, you got to check that out. She has worked on the United Nations Commissions for Human Rights. She consults on marketing, media, political strategy, has served on quite a few boards for the Trust of Public Land, America Public Media, Children's Bureau, the Mayor's Small Business Board, Southern California Public Radio, Green Leadership Trust, the Los Angeles Universal Preschool, and is the executive president of the Latino Donor Collaborative. She has a long passion to empower Latino community. Welcome to the show, Ana Valdez. How are you?
Thank you, Rafa. Thank you, Brenda. It's so exciting to be here. I can't wait for our discussion, but more importantly, you make it so much fun. So I've been savoring this interview for like the last 2 days.
So we had, people don't know that we have like these off interview moments where we talk on Zoom just to get to know each other and have like these connections, hence the name of the show, Conexión. And one of the things that really intrigues me is how both you and I have an obsession for statistics. And that is one of the reasons, like, if anybody knows of any of the shows that we do, I am obsessed with statistics. And there are no other better statistics than the ones that are offered by the Latino Donor Collaborative. And so it's great to have you on the show. We're going to go ahead and start first with history, obviously, and culture, because we like to get to know who we're actually interviewing. So, one of the things that we do here is share people's stories. And a lot of our stories are first gen. You know what I'm saying? But you were born and raised in Mexico. So what was your experience like growing up there?
Absolutely. Thank you. That's a great question. And yes, I am actually your immigrant, from the latest, wave of it. And I actually was born and raised in Mexico City. I arrived here as an adult. I had gone to school in Mexico City and also in Spain. And so my experience has been incredible. I feel blessed to be able to see the Latino community in the United States from outside, but also from the inside. I've been here for 25 years. I'm married to a guy whose family came here in 1570. And so this guy could not be more Latino, but at the same time could not be more American, right? And I love how he describes himself. He says, rather than feeling like he's not from here, not from there, he actually feels 200% American. And he always says, I am 100% American, 100% Latino, and I'm better because of it. And I don't have to choose, right? And so it's like some people are saying lately, it's his superpower. And so I love seeing this community emerging the way it is, driving the growth the way it is. And then, of course, my kids are, part of that community, and I am part of that community. I'm a proud American now. And so, it's fascinating. It's become my passion. I always have worked to empower communities that may not have representation, but this is my community and I am fascinated with it. It's my life mission, and it goes perfect with what I do today, which is working for the Latino Donor Collaborative.
I have a question when it comes to as far as like tradition. So because of the fact that we've in some cases we come from another country, or a lot of people have been living here for a really long time. And so you kind of take the embodiment of what America has to offer. Do you find it hard, the traditions that you knew about, like when you were living in Mexico, now that you're here in the United States? Or were you able to kind of keep those traditions and keep that culture and then sharing that with your kids?
That's a great question, Rafa, because I have to say that I have worked really hard on keeping them, and I have succeeded, if you may. My kids know their Mexican side from where I come from, and they also are extremely proud of their Mexican American side. And so at our household, it is very funny because there's a complete different definition of chile verde. One from New Mexico, which is my husband's, right? And it's cooked completely differently. And they feel they are the most Mexican Mexicans ever. And then the chile verde in Mexico City, which is, sometimes chicken, sometimes pork, all these different ways of doing it. But my kids actually love both. And we celebrate, for example, Christmas in Mexico is the 24, right? The Christmas Eve. That's a big dinner with gifts and everything. Here is the 25th, right? And so we celebrate both. And what I've tried to do is to literally make my kids feel proud that they have actually two sets of gifts, right? Plus, wait, three sets of gifts, because then
Three.
we also celebrate the Reyes
Wow.
Magos. The Reyes Magos,
Do
the three
you?
kings in Mexico, are
Yes.
big,
Oh, wow.
big. So they get their gifts on the 24th, their gifts on the 25th, and then on the 6th of January, they leave their shoes outside the house, and the three kings leave gifts for them in their shoes. So to your point, what I've tried to do is to make it fun, to make it as an addition and a great one, right? I remember when they grew up, they went to the school that had very few Latinos. And I used to come to the school and celebrate for the whole school. It was a tiny school, that's why. But I used to organize with the teachers and do Dia del Niño, Children's Day. I don't know if you guys, are familiar with it, but Dia del Niño in Mexico is huge, right? So we did Dia del Niño. We did posadas, which is those parties we create 10 days before Christmas, right? And so it's big parties. You're talking piñata, you're talking lots of food, you're talking, ponche. And so just to make it like that, and it's funny because and again, I'd say it in the loving way, but these white kids now that are older, they always come back and it's like, are you
Are
having a
you having another
posada? Are
posada?
you? And so, I am having posadas, and the thing is that these white parents crack up, right? Because they know more about my traditions than about wherever they come from, whether it's Germany or Italy and so that's how I've tried to make it fun.
I'm not gonna have to celebrate Three Kings with the shoes though, because like nobody's gonna want to grab my shoes, try to put toys in them or whatever, and then try to smell that afterwards. That's gonna be insane. Yeah. I don't know if you're gonna be doing Three
It's
Kings
a
with me.
tradition, Rafa. It's a tradition. You don't have to do it, to the exact, point of using your worst shoes. No, you can do your slippers, or you can do your socks, or
That's funny.
you can adapt. You can adapt.
Oh, I personally love that. Anna, thank you for sharing that. That brought me back. I used to do posadas with my grandmother. She's from Mexico, and being Mexican American, she's really tried to make that tradition just something worthwhile. So, that got me so excited. One thing that I wanted to mention, I mean, like mentioned before, you were a part of the United Nations Commissions for Human Rights. You were a presidential appointee by the Clinton administration, served on numerous boards, co-founder of the Valdez Productions, and a powerhouse professionally. I want to ask, who is your role model? And also, I mean, what advice would you share for young women, girls who are interested in the political and business world?
You know what? There's so many role models. I have this part that I copy people, and I feel like at certain point I was kind of not comfortable with it, but now I am really comfortable because they're my role models, right? So there's so many people. There are women, there are men that I so admire. There are, I can tell you maybe I'll mention a name of a woman, and I'll mention a name of a man. Aida Alvarez, I don't know if you know her, but she's incredible. And she probably doesn't know how much I think of her when I make decisions, right? Linda Alvarado. Linda Alvarado and I'll tell you a little bit about them. They're tremendous women here in the United States. And Linda is a self-made, incredibly dedicated and successful businesswoman and mentor and almost transformational leader in so many ways. On the side of the guys, my boss, Sol Trujillo, the founder of the Latino Donor Collaborative, is a tremendous powerhouse that has dedicated his life in the last 10 years, 12 years to empower Latinos. He could be doing, consulting for millions and millions of dollars. And instead, he has built all these different organizations and all these different movements to empower Latinos. He just wants to make sure that Latinos get a taste of what he's been lucky to develop for himself, right? This guy was the head of 3 of the 50 largest telecom companies in the world. Nobody has done that. Forget about Latinos doing that. Nobody in anybody, yeah, right? We talk about Lia Coca, or we talk about, different leaders in the corporate world. They've been incredible leaders for one company. He's been an incredible leader for 3 different companies in the world. And so he's a big role model for me. I follow a lot of his decision making when it comes to empowering the community. His family is amazing too. There's so many. I couldn't, begin to even talk about all of them. My husband is a great role model too. He's he's a sincere, completely devoted guy to the community, and he taught me this love, to serve specifically the Latino community in the United States. So those are my role models. I'm grateful to be able to work close to them, specifically with Linda and Sol, and of course my husband. So I could talk about this forever, but I think those 4 examples probably are fine.
I'm gonna listen to this interview and just be completely in awe. He's like, "Oh,
I know." And I will say, just to expand on that, growing up, I think finding a role model in the Latino community was so important. And the fact that you are surrounding yourself with role models is so powerful. So I am definitely going to take note of that. And I'm going to definitely just, be so mindful of all the enriched and powerful Latinos already making history currently right now. So I can't wait to re-listen and just research, and it makes me excited.
Yeah. And you know what, Brenda, I love what you're just saying, because one of the things, so we are very lucky to work with a lot of young people at the Latino Donor Collaborative. We have deals with, University of Chicago and University of Notre Dame and UCLA and USC and Loyola Marymount to get all these kids working with us. And the constant comment that we hear is, I didn't know there were so many Latinos that were successful. And let me tell you what the tragedy of that is, that there are. And the tragedy is that we're not connecting, because we are successful. I can tell you a list of 500 that I know personally that are these role models, but we are not connecting with each other. We are thinking, one of the things that comes out from our polls lately is that we Latinos know that we are very successful. Each one of us here know that our parents sacrificed for us, that we've worked really hard for our kids, that we have achieved what probably nobody would have achieved in our circumstances that we know of. But we didn't know before the numbers of the LDC. The 3 of us know the numbers of the LDC, but most people don't know the numbers of the LDC in our community. We don't know the power as a group. We have to copy African Americans. We have to copy the Jewish community. They do know the power of them as a group, maybe sometimes more than as them as individuals, right? I think there has to be a balance. We have to have both. But we are missing that part of knowing that, Rafa is not an exception. Brenda is not an exception. I'm not an exception. There are many people out there. So the Latino Donor Collaborative is creating the data and the initiatives and the communication and the social media campaign to actually insert that into our identity. We are amazing individually, but we're also amazing as a group. We deserve a voice that we don't have today, but we're willing to step up and look for it, because as a community, we're driving the growth, we're driving the prosperity, we're driving the family values, and like that, on and on and on of the good things that we're driving.
Yeah. And I actually, one of the things that you impressed me with the answer there is because I've been talking to my kids, and I talk to a lot of, when I do these interviews, we have discussions on Latin representation. I always say the same thing. You saw huge movements like the BLN, the APOC. You saw a bunch of them. We just don't seem to have one for the Latino community. There's no like BLM for the Latino community. You know what I'm saying? Where you have a voice. Now, obviously, everybody has their idea about BLM and what's happening with them now. But what I'm saying is just from a contextual section, we don't have a superpower voice that's not a celebrity and doesn't really count for the rest. You know what I'm saying? We don't have a giant movement that has taken over the United States kind of, fight for us. And for whatever reason, we Latinos are like so reluctant to do it. It's almost like, why are we waiting? Like, what are we waiting for? Who is it that we're waiting for? It's not like Mark Anthony is going to grab a baton and start heading down to Washington. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're following these people, you're not going to be, it's just one of those things where you have to I think it's going to start with the everyday person to kind of start uniting one by one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you know what? It's not our fault. We haven't been given a space in the public voice.
Yeah, agreed.
So, we have a report, and the reason why we started doing this report is because we perceived our lack of voice, but we didn't know the numbers. And since 4 years ago, we started what it's called the Latinos in Media report. I'm going to tell you numbers that are going to devastate you, but it's important that you get devastated so you get activated.
Yeah.
Out of the more than 1,300 shows that the networks and studios create every year, only 2.4% have a Latino lead. Out of that 2.4%, half of them are negative. So you'll think about Narcos and The Queen of the South and Mayans MC and all this horrible role models, right? So half of the 2.4 are horrible. I'm going to tell you more. A fourth of the other half are good role models, but stereotyping, which are housekeepers and gardeners and valet parkers. They are fabulous and we love them, but they limit us to those roles. And then a fourth of that 2.4 is Magnum PI and, Station 19, where the girl is a great, firefighter. So a fourth of 2.4%. So we haven't had that participation. That's why it's so important that we create and fight to create content that portrays us like your family and your family, Brenda and Rafael, because we don't have that. And so this social media campaign that we are actually, the LDC is working on doing, is to create awareness of this and then to show the super numbers. You and I nerds love them, that show how we are actually powerful. We are better. African Americans have been really lucky to have churches, right? To have groups like the Jack and Jill group for up and coming middle class professionals and their kids. Of course, the Jewish community has been amazing at building these things and actually having them for the longest time. We haven't. Our church is very dogmatic. It depends on the Vatican, at least the majority of Latinos who, are Catholic, right? We don't have a social movement that comes from, speaking to somebody that we see as an authority every Sunday. So we need to create it. We need ourselves to create it. And if there's no better way to create this identity and to create these numbers than facts, economic facts, because in the end, in this country, green talks,
of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what we're trying
no debating.
to do.
And so we've been talking about the Latino Donor Collaborative, and everybody's probably sitting there going, what the hell are they talking about? So why don't we go ahead and actually mention it so that way we don't. No. You're not. It's it's one of those things where it's like, so you're the executive president. And why don't you go ahead and explain to everybody what the Latino Donor Collaborative is?
Of course. Thank you. You're right. We were supposed to talk about me, right? And I keep going back to the Latino Donor Collaborative. Please ask me questions. I'll be super happy to talk about it. But in the meantime, let me tell you about it. This is a nonprofit. The Latino Donor Collaborative is a nonprofit that was created in 2010 when some of these laws in the border states started emerging, where racial profiling of Latinos was being legalized. So if you looked or sounded Latino, they could arrest you without even having any motive for it. And so all these leaders on the business side and on the social, justice side got together and decided we need to do something. And on the side of the business leaders, they created the Latino Donor Collaborative, which was the result of knowing that we didn't have this narrative that united us and that was based on facts, but only stereotypes. Stereotypes that made the average American believe that they had the right to stop us in the street because there was something wrong with us. And so business people that are always based on numbers decided, why don't we create the numbers? We know we're powerful. We know we're driving the economy, but we need to know the numbers exactly. We went on to create partnerships with UCLA, Stanford University, Columbia University, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And on the side of the business, private business researchers, we created partnerships with Boston Consulting Group and Accenture and NERA and several others. Banks, we have great partnerships with banks to create research. And we dug out from the official numbers how much we were contributing. Nobody had done that before. The numbers were there, but it was a bunch of, files, right? Where nobody has really dug out. So we dug out the numbers of what Latinos were contributing to the GDP, what Latinos were doing for entrepreneurship, how much Latinos were buying homes, how much Latinos were graduating and not dropping out from, college. From high school and then enrolling in college. So all these numbers, all official, we started to put together. And suddenly we created a really important part of what we are in numbers and therefore a little bit of identity. So that's what we do at the Latino Donor Collaborative. We basically consider ourselves a think tank that gathers information to create a narrative of who we really are, fact-based. And the great thing is that our board sustains us. Our board is incredibly generous. They pay for most of what we do. So why do we do it like this? Because we want to be independent. What happens with a lot of nonprofits is that as soon as you start getting money from the same people that are creating the problem, you start being more quiet. You start being a little bit more subdued. The agreement from the beginning in this group is that we would never compromise our independence, and therefore our board will mostly sustain everything we do. And we have done it like that for 12 years. Another thing that is important to know is that we are a nonprofit, and more importantly, we distribute every piece of data that we have for free. So anybody can use this information. We sponsor it, we fund it, we create it, and we distribute it all on our dime. Why? So that the most people can use these numbers for everything. Business people can use it to plan. Social justice organizations can use it to create their business plans or to create their strategies. Anybody can use these numbers to just empower what they're doing.
Yeah, and a lot of what we do here is using those specific numbers. So, we once we found the website, it was it. Give it to Brenda here, who actually was the one who was like, I have a place that you need to go, because she knew I'm like huge on statistics. She's like, I have a website that'll give you the statistics. I went in there and I was like Willy Wonka walking into the, or one of those kids walking into the Willy Wonka chocolate factory. I was Baruch Assault. I was everybody walking in there because I'm just
I love to hear that. That's what we want. That's what we want.
Absolutely. No, Anna, discovering LDC a few years ago just opened my eyes, and even being able to spotlight some of your statistics, LDC statistics on the show has been just a game changer. And actually to continue with that, LDC and you are a part of this incredible mission. Y'all are changing views and the impact of Latinos with your statistics and facts. I'd love to learn, what initially, or I guess, how did you get involved with LDC initially, and what continues to inspire you about the mission?
Thank you. That's a great question. So 12 years ago, when these leaders got together, one of those leaders was my husband. And because I knew the people that were summoning the event, I was invited. And at that time, I was doing consulting, and they asked me if I could help to create the group by raising funds and raising support. And I did. I worked for, I would say, 9 to 10 months, and we put together the organization. And then I left. I was a consultant. It was great. And of course, I followed it and I kept attending the events and everything. But my work at that point had finished. I helped to put it together. They actually recruited an executive director that was a volunteer. And he did a great job and started growing, the organization. Then there were 2 or 3 other executive directors. And then finally in 2015, they called me and they said, would you like to actually become the executive president? And I was really excited because at that time, my kids were older. I had the time. I had seen what they've done with the group, which was great. And I more importantly, I had seen the potential of it, right? My mission was always the same, right? My mission in life is to empower our community to give everything we can give to this country, which is amazing. And so the mission of the LDC is exactly that. And actually, their mission is to do it through narrative, through communication, through data. And again, my innate media kind of, inclination plus data nerdness, just made it for me the best, job I could ever hope for. And so I've been here almost 7 years, which is crazy. I can't believe that. But that's how I was initially, engaged, and then I left, although I followed it through those years. And then I came back fully to lead it. And it's been a joy, a pleasure. As I said, my board is a gift. Not only are they incredibly successful and mentors and examples, but they're incredibly generous. Not only with their money, but with their time, their connections, their ideas, their expertise. It's just a joy. Honestly, I'm really lucky.
I have one question when it comes to the Latino Donor Collaborative. What is and you may have already mentioned that before with the statistics here. What is the most shocking statistic that when you look at it and you see it over and over, it just kind of like haunts you? It's one of those things where it just like either haunts you or it makes you really excited, because there's obviously two sides to everything. But which statistic makes you go, damn?
Oh my God, Rafa, there's so many. It's crazy, but I'm going to tell you, 3 examples, just because I have to choose 3, but I could tell you 10. So actually, it's funny because the first presentation we did for, we have this series where we talk to CEOs, right? And so one of the first presentations that I actually attended was a meeting with the chief editor of the New York Times. And I think I've said this before, but I remember him, looking at the data. The presentation was called "The Surprising Truth About Latinos," and he didn't know how surprised he was going to be, because he kept passing the pages and looking at us, and passing the pages and looking at us. And literally, when he closed it, he said, if you were not bringing these numbers, and if they were not backed by Stanford and UCLA and Columbia University, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I wouldn't believe them.
Yeah.
Because they're shocking. And the sadness is that they're shocking because they shouldn't be shocking. Our power should be well known. Our power should be absolutely recognized. But going back to your question, so one of the most important ones, I remember when I started, in this report that the LDC created with Stanford, it said that 82% of all the new businesses from 2009 to 2015 had been created, the new businesses, right, had been created by Latinos. I remember looking at the number. It was my first month in the job. And I remember looking at the number and saying, I'm not reading it right. I'm not reading it right. Until I actually, literally, I really thought so. 82% of all the new businesses from 2008 to 2015 were founded by Latinos. And I remember many questions, right? Once the Stanford people confirmed the number, I said, well, it must be like, small little stores here and there. And they said, no, all kinds of businesses. Some of them are huge and billionaire businesses, and some of them, lots of them are small businesses. But that was kind of crazy. Second number that was shocking for me, of course, was, and this report was a joy to create because I was lucky and blessed and honored to create it with my boss, with the chair, right? The chair of the LDC. And that was the first time that this report had been created. It's the Latino GDP report. And, the first time we got the numbers, literally even my boss, even Sol Trujillo said, I knew this was going to be shocking, but I was not aware that it was going to be this incredible. So we started that report in 2017. This year will be the 5th year. And I'm going to tell you the numbers for last year. If Latinos in the United States were a country by themselves, the GDP produced by Latinos in the United States would be the 7th largest economy in the world.
Wow.
Only Latinos in the United States, citizens and not citizens in the United States. Let me give you a perspective of what that number means. That number means that, first of all, we as Latinos would be a first world country. First. Second, we would be a bigger country than Canada, bigger than Russia, bigger than Brazil, bigger than Italy. We would be that big. Another number. If we were that country with the GDP that we're producing, we would be on the top 10, of course, because we would be the 7th. And of those top 10, we would be the 3rd fastest growing. Faster than the United States GDP overall. Only slower than India and China. India has 1.2 billion people, and China has 1.24, I think, billion. We would be the 7th largest economy, only with 60 million people.
Wow, that's insane. That is an
People
insane
need to
number.
know
Crazy,
this.
right? That's really insane.
People need to know this. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. Totally. Go to our website. We have that. And this report, the Latino GDP report, is done with UCLA and with Cal Lutheran University. We chose Cal Lutheran University because they're one of the 6 direct resources to the Wall Street Journal. So we needed credibility, right? Specifically with people that are focused on the economic numbers. So we needed to be backed by the same sources that they actually rely on. So that report is done in partnership with the two of them, UCLA and Cal Lutheran University. So I could go on and on with these numbers, which is just, they're incredible. They're really, really incredible. Imagine to start creating our identity. Imagine your kids being born and raised and soaked on and swimming on this pride.
The media gives you a different set of ideals to think of, where for some reason we seem to be the bottom dwellers to everybody else here in the United States, and that's one of the things. And actually, it's one of the things that we're going to talk about next. Because you guys created a production company. Your husband Jeff Valdez created the Brothers Garcia show, which was on Nickelodeon. And for those who don't know or haven't seen it, it's a Latino positive show that has impacted a lot of families early on in the 2000s.
My family.
Yeah. And now the show was recently revived, and it's a new sitcom that is called The Garcias, and that's now on HBO Max. Now, I caught a couple of the episodes yesterday. One of the things I will say is, if HBO Max, if you're watching, there's no reason why we shouldn't be on the front page. That's just one thing right there. Because when you go in there, you actually have to search for this show in order to find it, which is, something that they need to change like immediately. I was looking on Twitter. There was people who were saying the same thing. One gentleman who actually mentioned it on Twitter was like, I had no idea that, on HBO Max, they had rebooted something that represented my family, because if it was up to HBO Max, we wouldn't know. And I would have completely missed out on it. So HBO Max, if you're listening to it, and I'll tag you just because I'm like that. You got to start changing the search feature for that. But can you tell us a little bit, because I know some people may or may not have, some people may or may not have caught the episodes yet. Helicopter Parents, that was funny. So that was for me. So, and for us Latino dads, we've all been there.
Exactly.
So can you tell us a little bit about the show and what you hope the audiences take away from it?
Absolutely. Thank you. First of all, you're right. The fight, if you may, and again, I don't know if I'm being politically correct here, but the fight to educate content creators that are completely oblivious to our culture, it's hard. One of the reasons why you don't see it right away on the website is because they classified it as HBO Max family. And that is good because we're overachieving like 150,000% any HBO family show. So we're stars there, but they're not actually putting it in the main, page. As you can see, the main page is made out of a lot of dark shows, a lot of shows that not only don't represent us, but are shows that probably you don't want your kids to watch, right? There's all this, darkness. And so what is beautiful from this show is that not only it represents your family and it represents your family, Brenda, but it also represents what we all Americans want to see, right? We're tired of seeing the sitcom where somebody's betraying somebody, or the darkness where, everything is a tragedy and everything is scary and everything is anxiety causing. Our families in the Latino community and most American families are good families, right? You don't need all this intensity because you just want to see the reflection of what for you is a peaceful, kind of familiar setting. And in the case of the Garcias, it is, as you were saying, Rafa, it is the reboot of a show that was on Nickelodeon from 2000 to 2005, 5 seasons of pure joy and pure Latino family that appeals to everybody. The show actually was in 39 countries the first season, and it ended up in 72 countries on the fifth season. And you're talking countries like Russia, Sweden, Spain, Saudi Arabia, the north of some countries in the north of Africa, India. I mean, all these countries saying, this is what I want to see. This is it. These people reflect my family. And so that's why it's important, because finally we saw, I remember comments like, finally a show that confirms my normalcy, right? Finally, this is something that people that look like me and that think like me. One of the comments in the focus groups that we did in the last month was, it's the first time I see a boy that looks like how I looked at that age, not in distress.
Yeah.
And think about that, right? So when you see a kid, he's either being chased by a gang, or his mother is being attacked in the crossing the border, or he's the son
Being
of a
offered
narco,
drugs.
right?
Yeah.
Or on the block, and God bless their soul, and I shouldn't, please forgive me, I don't mean, but on the block, out of the 4 kids, the Latino kid is the one that goes into a gang instead of going to college, right? We need to see better role modeling. We need to see kids like this who, when they grew up, the parents were middle class, and the kids remain in middle class, and some even better than middle class, right? One is a .com millionaire, the other one is an astronaut, the other one is a money manager, and the other one is a reporter. It's your family and mine.
Yeah, the cool thing about it is it's like the house that they are in. It's kind of cool to represent it because it's harder and work that got them the house, not because they're selling drugs at a kilo. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the only time that we ever see Latinos in a house that's actually of that magnitude, is whenever we're doing something illegal.
Exactly.
So,
And these kids are not.
That
But I
is
gotta
so
tell you
true.
something, guys. Sorry to jump on this because I get so excited. But wait for episode 10, and I get goosebumps. Because on episode 10, I don't know if I should preview this, but on episode
hey, it'll be
10,
an exclusive, so preview it.
it's an exclusive preview.
There you go.
Episode 10, you're going to see a 10-minute piece talking about exactly what you just said.
Ah, there you go.
And you're going to cry, and you're going to laugh, and you're going to rejoice on the show because of the statement in this 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Please, I tell you, I know those 10 minutes are going to revolutionize the community. Hopefully everybody will see it, because it's the most illustrating piece that can actually make you feel to your core exactly what you just said. which is these people have a home and they earned it and they were not narcos.
Anna, I have to say the fact that you, so spotlighting this spoiler alert as well. We did write a review, so we can't wait for people to read it. But that is one thing that really stood out to me. The fact that, oh my gosh, seeing Larry become an astronaut, it was kind of a nod from the original episode. I was like, oh my gosh, he did it. And then Carlos and George being successful businessmen, and Lorena like getting into the television scene and, you know, beating to her own drum. You don't see that. That is what a younger generation needs, and just ultimately our community needs. To transition a little bit, I mean, you cover on this a lot, but just like, in your words, why is it important to change the narrative and eliminate the stereotypes of the Latino community? I know you touched on it a bit, but just in your words, why is it so important?
You know, that's a really good point, and thanks for letting me make it, because, you know, narrative is vital for absolutely everything that we Latinos do, but also everything that happens in the United States. It goes from access to capital. So within that report from Stanford that says that we are building and creating 82% of all the new businesses from 2009 to 2015, it also says that one of the biggest challenges of these businesses is access to capital. And there is no reason why that should happen, because Latinos, and I have the information on my website, please go, but Latinos actually perform 10% better in return of their investment than any other businesses. And Latinos have 11 points more than other non-Latinos in credit score. So we actually return the money. So there is absolutely no reason why Latinos are not getting the credit except stereotypes and preconceived conscious and unconscious ideas. It's the banker that decides that, not sure that I can trust this Latino, so I may not give him the credit card, or I may not give him the credit, or the mortgage, or the lending, whatever instrument, they choose to expand their business. It's the private equity guy that says, you know what, I have an Indian group or a Chinese group, and I have this Mexican American group. You know what, I'm going to go for the secure part, which is, by the way, not true, because our credit scores are better, right, in every way. So narrative, you go back to the question, Brenda, why narrative works is important, because narrative determines who got the credit and who didn't. Narrative determines just your last name, determines when you're applying to college, subconsciously or consciously, an application or how narrative, determines if you're calling to a doctor's office and you need to see the doctor today, but you're, Ana Valdez, and maybe they say, I have 3 people waiting. I'm going to tell so-and-so better than Ana Valdez, right? So narrative impregnates everything we do. And the worst part is that not all of us are aware of it. But for hiring, for credit, for courtship, for networking, for anything that you can tell me that is the cause of a lack of access of Latinos, has to do with narrative. And again, narrative is not what I'm telling you verbally. Narrative is what people believe consciously or unconsciously. Google has something called unconscious bias. Sometimes unconscious bias is the worst.
No, and the worst part about it is the media and people themselves have an unconscious bias. That's the part that's really killing the progress, at least from our community, is a lot of people have bought into the fact that you've hit your limit. And I'm like so tired of hearing that. Like you only have a cap because you're Latino. No, like there's no cap. Like, why are you thinking that there's a ceiling that you keep bumping your head? There's no such thing. You can reach whatever you want to reach, and it's completely up to you to do that, regardless of who's trying to hold you back, who's trying to do this, or what the media says you can't. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's, that for me has been like the biggest trait.
Exactly. And why would we have a cap and not white people
Yeah.
or not other communities? There's no reason.
Or
We
even
are the
worse.
immigrants in this generation.
The funny part is when somebody tells you that you're trying to go above the cap, and so because you went above the cap, you're considered white. Think about that one.
That's the worst. Imagine the narrative that because you do well, you suddenly look white.
Look or
Nothing
act white.
changed,
Oh,
but you look white.
stop acting like a blanquito. Like, since
That's so true.
I've never understood that concept of why somebody would sit there and say, hey, stop acting like a white person. No, I'm not acting like a white person. I'm acting like a Latino who wants to aspire for the things that I want to aspire for. Like, I don't understand why I'm capped just because, my last name is Fernandez. So hopefully.
Totally. And you're acting, and you know
100%.
what, Rafael? You're acting as 85% of the community.
Yeah.
Because according to the US Census, 15% of Latinos live in poverty and 85% don't. So you're acting as 85%.
You wouldn't have known
So
that, though.
no, you're not acting as, you are part of the 85%, which is the majority. And you know why? You know why people don't know that? Because all the freaking stories
the opposite
are done of that 15%.
Because that's what sells.
Not the 85.
That's what sells.
The Brothers Garcia is one of the very, very few stories on the 85%.
Very much so. Well, look, Anna, I completely appreciate that you came and share statistics. Obviously, I was sitting here drooling while you were, spitting out numbers. So I'm about to go get a tissue now and kind of dry myself. But if they wanted to follow the Latino Donor Collaborative and you yourself be able to connect, where would they go and do that?
So everything Latino Donor Collaborative, LinkedIn, website, Facebook, and Twitter, it's LDC Latino instead of Latino Donor Collaborative. But other than that, just go to our website, latinodonorcollaborative.org. You can over there you can find all the handles and of course all the reports. We distribute for free, and we also have a section of reports that are positive about our narrative from other partners, right? So there's a lot of information there. Please feel free to download it as many times as you want. Share it, use it, make yourself even richer with it. That's what we want to see. And watch the Garcias on HBO Max.
Oh,
please.
you're
going to be surprised. Yeah. Every episode is better, by the way, Rafa and Brenda. The first 3 were released last Thursday. Tomorrow there's 2 more. The next week 2 more, and then lastly, but in 3 weeks you'll have the last 3. And again, that 10th episode is gonna get you.
That's the thing that confused me, because when you were sitting there talking about 10th episode, I'm like, I only saw 3 episodes there yesterday. What am I missing? Do I have to unlock like some type of hidden code or something to get the other like?
No, you know what, Rafa?
They're railing us.
Exactly, and that's another HBO issue. They decided to only release the 3, and they never let people know that they were coming and how. And that's another issue.
Man. Yeah, because that's the one thing I noticed.
The more you can help us to spread the word. Yeah.
Because it doesn't say like, oh, it's a weekly special. I mean, they do it for, Euphoria and all these other shows that are on the streaming platforms. You can't miss it. They have advertisements everywhere. Like, it would be great for them to be able to do that. Like, I don't understand.
By the way, we have internal information and it's doing really well. So there's no reason why they wouldn't do it. They shouldn't do it.
That's the stuff that, that's the stuff that we need to find out, because when I tag them, I want to be able to give them numbers.
I know. I wish I could. That I can.
That way I can back it up. They're going to be like, who the hell are you? And I'm going to be like, man, I got the numbers to back me up right here. You got to turn around and just put that on the front page.
You know what you can do? If you have the patience, you can go to TikTok and Instagram and see how the views and the likes compare to other shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's public.
Oh. By the way, I'm following all the actors now. I'm obsessed with them. So yes, they're cool in my book.
She's stalking them.
They're lovely.
She's stalking them.
You know what? Here's the thing. I cannot emphasize. I grew up watching the Brothers Garcia as a kid. Seeing this is just nostalgic, and I'm just connected, invested. Anyway, I'll stop.
Brenda, you are music to my ears. And I have to invite you next time we get together because I got to tell you something. They are as united and as fun as you can see, as you see on the show. They love each other. They defend each other. They hang out together. And this is a cast of 13 people.
Yeah, it's quite a few.
There's a potential for conflict, believe me. And they love each other. It's like mellow. It's not mellow. It's like honey. Honestly, it's just so easy to be with them. They're fun. They're cool. They are loving. I'll invite you next time there's a gathering.
Oh.
I'd love it.
Definitely,
I'd love
that would definitely do that. And it'd be great. Look, I'm not even sure it's possible. I know we have to go through publicists and so forth, but it would be great to be able to speak to them at maybe a future time where we can, anytime. You ready? We'll bring them to the Conexión or the Latin Bible Show.
Let's do it. Let's do it next week. You tell me when.
Hold on a second there.
And I know that you're going to edit this.
Hey, I'm good with whatever day you choose. You choose a date, I'll make it happen. I'm like that. So that
I'll be there.
I will find the day because we absolutely should do it. They should come here. They should tell you about it, and you both should meet.
No, that'd be awesome. That'd be great.
That'd be incredible.
So look, we have her on recorded line now, so she can't go back. And speak.
Done.
So guys, thank you for joining our show. Anna, it was an absolute pleasure to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, Anna Valdez, the executive president of the Latino Donor Collaborative, and just an absolutely amazing role model for anybody out there who is trying to, you know what I'm saying? Like, just jump on it. Make sure you follow her. Make sure that, you ask questions.
Look who's talking.
Hey, go for it. Go on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach you?
LinkedIn is great. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. LinkedIn
Go follow her on LinkedIn and follow us. Look, this is our very first show of Conexión from Wafi Media. So follow us, www.todowafi.com. Go to all social medias at Todo Wafi. Follow Conexión. This will be on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe. I'm Rafael with Brenda and with Anna, and we are out.